Hello. So today we're looking at some AD&D. What I want to do first of all before I start is just thank everybody who's supporting the program, and I want to thank especially the people who are throwing some skin in the game and putting in through the Patreon. It's all good. Thank you very much, and it's great to know that there's people out there that enjoy what I'm doing, as well as supporting it with comments. I love to hear different people's point of views and opinions. I love to be called out on things when it may not be quite right exactly as it is written in a book or something, and so on. That's, as long as we keep the conversations going, it's all good. I'm really happy to keep on producing. All right, so on to today's little adventure, our tirade. What I'm going to talk about today is just a little section which impacts on a lot of things, and that would be this one here, Infravision and Ultravision, as well as just discussing general light and going through what the books say and what they want to do in terms of how things work. So once we get that sorted, we'll get it all started and we can get on with it. If I've got a chance, it'd be nice to be able to do a little bit on scale, but that's all right. We'll might have to do that in a different adventure, a different day. All right, so let's begin. Okay, so first of all, we need to look at what is Infravision and Ultravision. We all have an idea about what they represent, and it's worth sort of keeping an eye on it, and every now and then revisit a topic that we think we know, just on the off chance that we could be not quite right. So what we do is we have a look at what it says in the player's handbook, and here it is, which isn't a lot. So what it says is that the initial description comes from the character races, and then we have a smaller section on page 102 where it just reiterates what has already been said. It goes by heat. It's roughly 60 feet. Dungeon dwelling creatures have it longer, up to 120, and we're spoilt by light from heat and torches and so on. And what you're trying to do is, when you use your infravision, you're using it as a way of looking down and trying to see that varying degrees of heat, which is very similar to like the Predator or one of those sorts of things, heat vision. Now what we also have, thermal vision. So what we also need to remember is that this isn't always on. So the big trick is that these sorts of vision abilities aren't the default on, and they're not layered for play characters. So the play character races that are daylight dwelling, above ground dwelling, and mixed, and so on, they have to concentrate to put the infravision on and the ultravision on if they've got it, and then they've got to maintain that concentration. Conversely, monsters that live underground probably have to concentrate to be able to see properly in daylight. So that's why they avoid the daylight, because it's just easier for them to see using their natural infravision. So let's have a little look at concentration then. If we look to the index, the glossaries, everywhere else, we try to find whereabouts anything to do with concentration exists. It doesn't. Now you might be asking, but aren't there spells that require concentration? Yes. Aren't there other magical abilities and powers that require concentration? Yes. So it's never really described or defined anywhere as to how it works and what you need to do and how long one can maintain concentration for. It may be related to wisdom in terms of strength of will to maintain it, as holding your breath and fatigue is about constitution. Again, some of this is all quite out there, and the DM needs to think about it a little bit, because for the most part you have to be still and you have to spend a round, and then you can concentrate on the task. With that's how most things work. The paladin, who's about to detect good and evil, the innate ability, and that's how some of the other concentration items work. So extrapolating that, we can say that from infravision and ultravision and senses in general, when you need to concentrate, you have to be still, you have to allow for all of the ambient sounds and the smells and everything else to just waft about, and then you can do what you need to do. So that's on page 60 where it mentions that, and it's actually in the section on detecting good and evil. But it's handy to know because once you've started the concentration, you've got to maintain it, and that's the hard part. And again, as I mentioned, that could be related to wisdom for anything other than how long you can strength of will hold on that level of concentration. And if you're, for example, an elf is trying to maintain concentration and the infravision as long as possible, so to lead the party out or to find a way through a dungeon or whatever, how long until it has to break, and so on. If we look at anything to do with fatigue, it's a very vague term in the very vaguest of ways. And what it does suggest is that after strenuous activity, which can be any combat longer than a handful of rounds, then you're looking at having to rest for 10 minutes or a full turn. So whether a rest or turning it off is required after so many rounds or so many a turn or something like that, that's entirely within the range of the DM to have to figure out. We'll put that on the list of things that the DM needs to figure out before they start about how concentration is going to work. Who'd have thought they'd have to figure that one out, huh? Apart from infravision, there are other light sources as well, and so the most popular ones being torches, lanterns, and bullseye lanterns, but magical items also give off some sort of ambient glow. Remember, if you're in the dim, dark, dank of a dungeon and you are trying to move around stealthily, having light sources is tricky. To turn on a light is great for the humans, and the other races may not be so, forgiving of that. But what we look at is how long the light source lasts, and then how the illumination works. So a torch might illuminate, might flicker and create more shadows. The lanterns light up more, for instance, and so on. But you've just got to work out how you're going to try and see, especially for the for the human player characters that are in the party. While we're talking about senses, we might as well have a quick look at the hearing at doors and general noise. And then this is one of those pieces here where everyone is able to just put their ear to a door and try and listen to what's on the other side. They're not going to be as good as the thief. They're not going to be able to hear as acutely as a thief can hear, and the thief's senses are generally sharper than a regular character. But everyone has a bit of a chance, and they do reflect in the first level and second level, the first early levels of a thief with these particular numbers. So why is a thief any different? It's got to come down to what the thief can hear and how well they can do it. So when your player characters are walking around in chainmail and plate mail and so on, they are making noise, and this is one of those areas where you just have to remember that in a dungeon which is still and quiet and for the most part uninhabited, you're looking at players being able to disrupt almost 100 feet worth of environment with all of their noises that go on, because they're always making noises and everything else. Of course, some of the characters have their special abilities, like the rangers, the elves and halflings, but they're rather the exceptions, but they've also got to be in very precise conditions. Ultravision is one of the most interesting abilities, and the only way that you can probably put that in into an idea of what it is, it's like the starlight scopes and the night vision goggles used by special forces. It allows you to view night conditions as daylight and so on. So you need to have the ultraviolet rays or something that spews forth ultraviolet rays to be able to see in that spectrum. Curiously, magical items disrupt the ultravision in the same way that torches and fire disrupt infravision. So there's a good chance that those magical weapons you're carrying around, they may be a little bit radioactive. But don't be too harsh. Don't be worried about that too much. The ultravision is primarily for night vision type monsters. I think there might be a couple of player characters that character races that came by later that used ultravision, but for the most part, it's the domain of monsters, and it allows for a wide sweeping view of the environment. Inside a locked room, inside a dungeon, it's useless. It needs to have the ultraviolet light or something that projects that at an invisible spectrum, so then they can view it from there. So maybe that's a nice spell to be produced rather than a light spell for a magic user. Create something that does the ultraviolet light and lets an ultravision character be able to see. Just as a thought. For the completeness of vision, we might as well look at some X-ray vision. Now, X-ray vision, obviously we're thinking X-rays, and we have limitations based on the substances and so on and everything else. When the creators built the X-ray vision, of course, the number one character in all of fandom that uses X-rays for their vision is Superman, and that's sort of led the charge in terms of how X-ray vision is perceived. Can't do it through lead, the heavy metals. You've got some range through other material and so on. And it comes with its own little description as to how it works. But pretty much that's what we're looking at there. Maximum thicknesses, how far you can go. So X-ray vision is something that's only available, I think, through the ring and maybe a spell. But you could always create more ways of it being used. A Kryptonian may show up. Who knows? Whilst we're also looking through some site-related items, I figure that this is always a good one as well, the Gem of Seeing. It's one of my favourite ones. I do like it. The gem sees everything. It sees absolutely everything. It sees everything on every level, on every layer, on every spectrum, on every plane, on everything and so on. It also has the very magical ability of being able to find things that people are trying to hide. So that could be a person walking down the street and you've got yourself someone with a letter that's to someone that they're trying to sneak away or keep hidden. You'll see it. You'll also see all the other myriad of creatures floating around, and seeing multiple planes at the same time is not something that the human eye or mortal eye is meant to be able to view, and therefore there's always a chance that things go incredibly wrong. And the DM should really play that up when they put the Gem of Seeing to an eye or to their eyes. It could be like glasses, or it could just be a single monocle that allows them to view it as a layer. However you want to do it, as old DMs, it's entirely up to you, but you want to do that so that you can make it as less likely that they're going to rely on it. The more you use it, you're looking into the weirdest of places. You're going to see demons, devils, swirling masses of gases and all sorts of things, just everything about. More importantly, someone's going to see them watching it. And once some of these creatures that like to just hide in the various planes and remain anonymous, they might be seen by accident, and then that draws the attention of the party to them. Something they may not want. And there's a lot of reasons why you don't want to find these sorts of creatures floating around. But you sort of see everything and you have to learn how to control it. So I suggest that for the DMs to really work out, if you're going to introduce a gem of seeing, how you like to see that perceived and done, and then work it out from there. So they have to concentrate on the layer that they're after, they have to concentrate on the object, they have to focus on it, and then of course they've just got all these other distractions that are trying to knock them aside, accidentally or intentionally. Alright, so one last point just on some of this. We have, if someone's invisible and they're holding a light source, the light itself that comes from that is not invisible. So just to sort of stress that point. People often ask, so why would you have an Infravision spell, or why would you try to make something of Infravision? And it just comes down to the ability to be able to concentrate, like what we talked about, and having the Infravision always on or available with just a command word or a spell. Something like the third level magic user spell Infravision, it is like 2 hours plus 1 hour per level. So that's a long time by the time you're looking at it, so you're that's a long time. You just have it turned on and just always be on, which is fine, but as we said, it's what you see is that blob of heat, or the changing of temperatures within, from cool and warm and so on. So you might get a corridor that's all blue, and you might see the faint outlines of the air, which is a colder or slightly warmer, if there's any volcanic activity, or if there's anything that changes the temperature in any way. So Infravision still is a bit twitchy. Ultravision, good for outdoors, good for seeing at night, and torches, lanterns and magical items to be able to create a glow that allow you to show, or to be able to read by, see and so on. But then that means everyone else can see you and know that you're coming. So alright, well, I just want to thank everybody for listening in today, and I'd like to just thank the people who are supporting the channel. And as I said, I'm very happy with with the responses that I'm getting. I'm getting a lot of people asking questions, which is great. I've got a lot of people that want to know how things work, which is fantastic. It does take me a little while to put together some content to make it seem so thrown together at the last minute. There's a lot of skill in that. So yeah, but I do think about what I would like to do next and how I want to move forward. Scale is something I want to do. I don't think I'll be able to, not doing it today, so I'll do that, save that for the next time. Comes into play with everything, so that's sort of why I was thinking about it. But light, Infravision, Ultravision, dark, we covered a few topics. Hopefully they're topics that people are interested in, so we'll find out, won't we? But Gem of Seeing and some of those, and Ring of XRay Vision, they're the sort of keys that the magical items that are worth thinking about, and how you would like to have them arranged in your campaign, or how the DM actually adjudicates that. So that's all pretty cool. So we've covered a few things. Yeah, well, thank you again for everybody's support, and I appreciate it all. And we will catch up hopefully along the way. We've got a number of conventions going around the world, and it's great to see the games coming back and people opening up. We'll get something going on as best as possible. We'll do what we can. All right, so this is another AD&D session, and we're just going through looking at what we were talking about, light and so on. All right, thanks everyone, and I really appreciate all of your time that you put into it. Thanks.